Welcome to week 3 of English 1301 8-week class. As you know that this week you will be submitting your first draft of your essay 1, which is going to be a descriptive narrative. Chapters 4 and 5 are going to be really important in showing you some of the techniques, but do feel free to go back to chapter 2, which talks about how to do a well-structured essay, and chapter 3, which tells you how to revise and edit your essay. In this PowerPoint, I'm going to show you some techniques for building your essay and the different pieces required and some strategies that may help you. So as you know, the basic format for an essay, you have 3 parts: your introduction, the body, and the conclusion. Your introduction is where you connect with your audience, and you end your introduction with your thesis statement, your argument for the essay. In your paragraphs, there should be multiple paragraphs, which means at least 3 or more. Each should be well supported. Remember, looking at those techniques discussed in chapter 4 about describing and developing that dominant impression and conveying what is happening in your narrative, supporting that with details and examples. Then you want to conclude your essay by reconnecting with your audience, reflecting on the support you provided for your thesis, and validating your thesis. Remember, as far as the thesis statement goes, that in the instructions for Essay 1, I included templates for a thesis statement. So look at those to get an idea of how you can incorporate that in your essay. So in your introduction, you want to connect with your reader, provide some background information, provide a roadmap of the essay, in other words, point by point what you're going to talk about, and then establish your main idea in your thesis statement. So now I'm going to provide you with 3 different strategies you can choose from for your introduction. So one strategy you could use is starting out your introduction by writing about the importance of the concept you're communicating through your narrative. For example, what you learned through your experience or how that experience changed your mind about something. And then explaining in a short summary the experience you're describing and how that experience impacted you in a way to emphasize that concept. Remember, you're focusing the whole thing on that concept, and then end with your thesis statement. Another strategy you may try is to start out with some background information and explain why that background information is important to the narrative. Why do I need to know that? And then explain how the narrative is important because it revolves around that concept that people should be aware of. And I use the word universal concept because it's about something that's important to people all over the world. And then ending with your thesis statement. One other strategy you may choose, so remember you're choosing one of these strategies. You can start out at the peak of the narrative, that climactic moment when you realized your dream or when you suddenly made that important discovery. And then explain how that moment did not just happen and the importance of understanding what led up to that moment. Explain how that experience revolves around that important concept, and then end with your thesis statement. Of course, after that, what I would imagine is that you would flash back in your body of your paper to when that whole thing got started, and then end with coming back to that climactic moment. So your body paragraphs, here's some little tips about how to develop those. Academic essays require multiple body paragraphs, at least 3. The idea in academic papers is that you are able to sustain an argument and flesh out your ideas. The intro prepares the reader for what he or she will learn in the body paragraphs. There are no real surprises, there's just more affirmation as we read forward in an essay. So don't think you're trying to save something for a surprise ending. You want your reader to be prepared for what you're going to present to them. The body paragraphs need to be well developed and supported with details and examples and description. And the body paragraphs need to follow a logical order. The body paragraphs need to support the main idea of the essay, so it's all unified around that one concept that you're supporting. And each body paragraph is about one major point in support of the thesis. So in your body paragraphs, you're going to start out with a topic sentence, which is going to establish the main point of that paragraph. you'll include at least 3 supporting sentences. And for each of those supporting sentences, you can provide details and examples. For example, some description, an example, a hypothetical example. You may think, imagine a person in this situation and this is what would happen. So observations that you made, personal experience. Remember that we're not using sources in this first paper, so these are all going to be drawn from your own thoughts and experiences. So close each paragraph with a concluding sentence that connects the main point to the thesis statement, and make sure you transition smoothly into the next paragraph. Make sure that transition is a logical transition. So here are some strategies for how to conclude your essay. So one thing you could do is close the narrative with the last image of your story, an image that strongly represents the mood or idea you are wanting to convey to your reader, much like Maya Angelou does in the article about the boys. Reflect on how you arrived at this moment, so you can look back at your body paragraphs and reflect on what you've already talked about in your essay, and then conclude with the main point learned and how that idea is helpful to others. Another strategy you may use for your conclusion is to come back to the moment where you started the paper. So you may start, if you start out at the peak moment, at that climactic moment, you may come back to that climactic moment now at the conclusion, and reflect on the steps that brought you to that peak point in your life, so back to that flashback throughout your body paragraph, and then recap what you learned from it all. One other strategy you may choose from, so remember you're choosing one strategy from these 3, reflect on the important key points from the narrative, consider how things may have turned out differently, and reassert the decisions that made the story turn out the way it did, and state what you learned from the way it did turn out. So this would use some good critical thinking skills, considering different ways to look at the same situation. I hope you found this helpful, and make sure that you ask me any questions you have about Essay 1 in the discussion post that I have available to you. Thank you, and talk to you all later.